On today's episode of Uncommon Sense, here in the month of May, Our Lady's Month, Grettelyn and I share two of our favorite Marian poems by G.K. Chesterton. Well, hello, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of G.K. Chesterton. My name is Joe Grabowski, VP for Evangelization here at the Society, joined, as often is the case, by my wonderful colleague and co-host, Grettelyn Darkey. Hi, Grettelyn.
Hey there, Joe.
Hello again. And this was your idea to perhaps, pick some Marian poetry for the month of May. So for those of you who are tuning in, watching, listening, and are not Catholic, you might not be aware that the Church does set aside the month of May to honor Our Lady. I'm not really too sure personally of the origin of that or why May, but it is fitting in a way with even the secular holiday of Mother's Day, and maybe that even was somewhat inspired by this earlier dedication. But it's an interesting way that the Church, takes customs, things like the May Queen and the May pole and those sorts of things, and instead the Pillar of Truth is sort of our May pole, and our May Queen is Mary. And so you even have, these ceremonies where Mary will receive a nice, lovely crown, especially of flowers, sort of honoring her with the springtime flowers, in an appropriate way of honoring, and we'll maybe get into that a little bit as we go along with this. But what Grettelyn and I have planned for you today is kind of fun for us because we haven't told each other what we're bringing to the table. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if you want to do Rochambeau, or how do you want to decide who goes first here, Grettelyn?
Doesn't matter to me. Yeah.
Well, why don't you hit me with what you've prepared, and then we'll talk about it. So Grettelyn is going to share her Marian poem, and then we'll chat about it a little bit. We'll see whether it's one I know, and then thereafter we can turn to the one that I have selected.
Perfect. So spoiler alert for you, it is one that you know, because I know you have the Queen of the Seven Swords book.
Yes, indeed.
But it is from that book, which is 100 years old this year. So kind of a special thing, and not back in print yet. Maybe ACS Books will do that at some point. But anyway, this one is called Images, and it is just to give a little bit of an explanation. It riffs on some of the titles of Our Lady from the Litany of Loreto. So I will be reading a little bit in Latin, and we can talk about what those are afterwards. Images by G.K. Chesterton. I saw a mirror like the moon made splendid by a sunken sun, framing the wrinkled face of kings and haloed harlots one by one, and many a judge with livid lips, and many a thief with thankful eyes, like his who climbed the torturing tree and drank that night in paradise. And something like a floating word behind a curtain overheard by chance from a strange chamber found me. The mirror is a woman's eyes. Speculum justitiae, ora pro nobis. Rose up through one clear rent of sky, the midmost of a monstrous tower, far up, far down, all earthly scale escaping in its pathless power, such strength as only burst from sight in some lost epic, vast and wild, where giants piling up their tower were pygmies by the thing they piled. And the heart knew without a word a strength below all strength had stirred, lifting the load of all the world, a woman's arm under a child. Turis Davidica ora pro nobis. Broad was the house of burning gold, like sunrise standing on the mountains, a million mirrored flames that glowed on golden peacocks, golden fountains, as tree by tree stood rayed with flame like 7-branched candlesticks, or fan all glories in an age of gold, glowed equal when the world began. But a voice speaking dreamily said in my ear, but not to me, one gold thread of a woman's hair has blown across the eyes of man. Domus aurea ora pro nobis. Deep in a silver wintry wood, in secret skies where sleepers rove, an ivory turret from the trees rose clearer than the sky it clove, too wan for flame, too warm for snow, which gold most delicate would defile, and near but never nearer growing, though one should labor mile on mile, and with it in the flash that brings sight of the world of little things, a woman's finger lifted up, a finger lifted with a smile, Turis Ebernia, ora pro nobis. Down through the purple desolation of deserts under stars they strode, who bore the dark and winged pavilion of their ungraven god for load. Strange if the secret of the skies behind low crimson curtains hid, or if that vagrant booth defied the huge hypnotic pyramid. Then, in an instant come and gone, green fields and one that stood thereon flashed like green lightning. And the thunder, a woman, was his walking home. Federis arca ora pro nobis. O breakers, O great iconoclasts, when will your raking hammers find what statues spring up with a word? What icons have built up the mind, or learn by hacking if the form be all a part or part a whole? Or grind out of your gods made dust what is the sign and what the soul? Or chase what images have hung in the air where any song was sung, seeing if the sword can put asunder all that was wedded with the tongue. Sede sapientiae ora pro nobis. So that's, I don't know. I think that's such a cool poem. And I love the titles of Mary. So just for the non-Latin speakers among us, the first stanza, Speculum Justitiae, that's,
Mirror
of Justice.
Mirror
Sorry.
of Justice.
I was like, what's speculum all of a sudden? Mirror of Justice, of course. And then Turis Davidica, Tower of David, is the next one. Domus aurea, House of Gold, is the third one. Turis Ebernia, Tower of Ivory, is the next one. Federis arca, Ark of the Covenant, is the second to last one. And then Sede Sapientia, Seat of Wisdom, is the last one. So Chesterton would have prayed these probably in Latin and clearly spent a lot of time thinking about them enough to make these wonderful stanzas describing what he thinks these titles mean. And any thoughts from you, Joe, right off your top of your head?
Well, I love how there are certain ones of these, especially, House of Gold, Tower of Ivory, that he comes back to again and again in different poems. So, I was thinking immediately of the line in the Little Litany, which is also itself, another meditation in this book, 1926, on the Litany of Loreto. And in there, he has things like, he calls her Gate of Heaven. He calls her a mirror. So the mirror of justice, the morning star, seat of mercies, and then finally the last couplet of that poem, A Little Litany. Your tall body climbed the ivory tower and kissed upon your mouth the mystic rose. And just that idea of a child lovingly crawling up his mother's, robes to get a kiss from her. Chesterton had this great, very human devotion. And I think there's a lot we could talk about here with the strength of that poem, because there's something for Chesterton very, very appropriate and very, very fitting about having a woman, the world's desire, close to the heart of this mystery of the redemption of salvation history. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I do love too how there's this sort of juxtaposition between this extremely other, enormous, godlike woman, right? It's almost like a description of Athena, or so you feel like at certain times this is one of the Greek goddesses. But then there's this pulling back at the end of each stanza to this very human element, just like what you were saying with the little child climbing the Tower of Ivory to kiss the mystical rose. I absolutely love that. But yeah, there's he talks about the where is it, the tower one? Hold on, it's the beginning here. Yeah, the Tower of David. This huge tower. The giants are made pygmies as they build it, and it's just her arm, holding a baby, holding the baby who made the world. It's so Chestertonian to be able to sort of play with scale in that way. I love that in this poem.
Yeah, it's something I think he would have been very apologetically concerned with around this time, for various reasons. Now, I don't think that he and Francis would have particularly struggled with that, although Nancy would be the expert on Frances Chesterton and her conversion, and it's been a while, forgive me, since I read the Woman Who Was Chesterton, and so I don't recall whether or not sort of the supposed papist Mariology was much of a concern. Typically for Anglicans, it's not, right? Because Anglicans held on to some of those things a little more than some of the other Reformed traditions, right? But, Chesterton in 1926, as his wife was preparing finally to come into the church, would have been having conversations about this and getting to grips with it himself. Now, for those who are familiar with our prayer for the intercession of G.K. Chesterton that we advise for private use here at the Society, but we do have it, one of the lines in there refers to his lifelong devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And this is an established thing. As early, before he had kind of his period of doubt, when he was first in the vaguest way attracted to Christianity, he calls Mary the figure of the faith. He says, her presence was sort of there and having this kind of attractive pull on him. And I think he was grateful to find when he found what he believed was Christianity, the Christian revelation sort of fully articulated and instantiated in the Catholic Church, that he didn't have to give that up. But he makes an observation, and forgive me, I don't recall where this is exactly, but he does make an observation somewhere where he says, the irony with some Protestant critiques is that they criticize, Rome for Mariology, but they also criticize Rome for papolatry, for like this obedience to the Pope and, all of the kind of authority that Rome exercises. And he says, well, you can't have it both ways. He said, left to themselves, a lot of Catholics throughout the world probably would go too far. They would be Mariolatrists. And he's like, the irony is that it is precisely having a central doctrinal institution, a magisterium, that is able to pull them back from the excesses of Marian veneration, which is not the same as worship due unto God. Even the word worship is very complicated in this context, but we don't need to go there. But yeah, I'm rambling a little bit, Grettelyn, but I think it's a wonderful insight into Chesterton's thoughts in a very important year in his religious life, as his woman, the woman in his life that he loves the most, is joining him in Mother Church, and that he perceives this other feminine figure as very important in that this mother that we all have up in heaven. So
no, I love that. I think that's great, and I do think that we do have that part of the prayer that it's Chesterton's lifelong devotion to the Blessed Mother, and he seems to have instinctively understood why we should defend her and why we should love her. If no other reason, because she's the mother of our Savior. And if we love Christ, we should love her. And it doesn't seem like he ever had to struggle with that. I think that there's a lot of converts who maybe did have to. I believe Newman did at one point, although I know I might be making that up. But there are stories here all over the place about, and if you talk to a lot of converts today, which you and I have, because many of our friends who are Chesterton are converts, Mary is just a point that they have to get through in their faith journey. Again, I also don't know if that was a big stumbling block for Frances. I do know she had a devotion. I don't know when that developed. But I do believe it helped her get through her infertility and lots of personal issues, just having a devotion to the Blessed Virgin. But it is interesting that in Chesterton, it was there long before his conversion. He was able to just embrace the Blessed Mother. And I don't know, even those of us who are cradle Catholics sometimes have to have a period of coming to terms with her, especially in the modern era when we, when I was talking to Carrie Gress on this podcast, we talked about all the things that make it hard for us to be friends with Mary. And, it's more than a conspiracy theory that there are forces at work that would have us reject her. So yeah, I think that's a very astute observation that this poem is in the same year as Frances's conversion. And, gives us a lot to think about there. That where is this coming from? Is this coming from conversations with her, perhaps? Hopefully, that would be a lovely thought.
Yeah, I think it's good. We do well to pause on this apologetic note too, though, because of the nature of today's episode and acknowledging that not everybody in our audience is going to be in the same place. And I think, what's worth drilling home here is that it's all of a piece, right? And Catholicism, as it grew up over the centuries, right, was in a world where some of these things that I think maybe look outrageous to modern eyes would not have been as outrageous all through all of those centuries, right? And even today, if we apply an even test, I think that we'll find that maybe the things that people get so hot under the collar about really aren't what they're making them out to be. I've never heard a sermon preached against idolatry because a man goes down on one knee in front of his beloved to propose marriage, right? We just don't hear that, right? Because it's not mistaken that genuflection isn't mistaken as idolatry, but other genuflections would be. But once again, this was not an uncommon thing that you did. You would genuflect before your liege lord, the king or queen. You would perhaps genuflect to take an oath as a knight or whatever it happened to be. Like, there were lots of occasions. Plus, just it was a society rich with pageantry and stratifications within society. And, Thomas Aquinas, among others, would point out that stratification, all of that stuff serves as an image of the great chain that links beyond the visible up into the invisible realms, where there are orders and magnitudes of other creatures that it's so easy to lose sight of, right? We don't, and yet that gets turned into a parody and a slight against the medievalists that, they were counting angels on the head of a pin. And it's like, well, what they were really doing is acknowledging the fact that we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. We're surrounded by unseen principalities and powers and all of our dead loved ones as well in some regard. And so just to be in touch with that, but the only way that you can without your head exploding is to have sort of stratifications. And that, like, if I'm in the presence of one type of, heavenly visitor, it's different from a visit from another. So now, all that having been said, even as a cradle Catholic, I'll sometimes meet certain people of certain cultural upbringing, and I'll be kind of like, that's a bit much, So we have to make those allowances too, right? And as long as the theology is solid there, I think we do well to have these devotions and affections in our lives. If it troubles you, then I don't think you need to do with them. I think you're missing out on something, but you don't Well, it's also not a prescription. It's just that they're not proscribed.
Yeah, and as a if it does trouble you, I think that's an instance to examine why. Because, most things that trouble us are a signal that something is going on in our heart. So I think it is important to question why that troubles you. I do know one of our members, I'll leave him nameless, but he's a convert, and he has said to me that several times that it's all a conspiracy about the Virgin Mary. Everything comes back to her. But whether or not you believe that's true, whatever that means, it's an interesting touch point that there something happens to most people's hearts with the Blessed Virgin Mary, whether it's an aversion or an attraction. She is sort of that touch point of something. So it is kind of, if she feels something in your heart that's that bothers you, maybe look into that. Maybe take some time with that. Maybe spend some prayer with that and try to see what's going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And read the Gospel of Luke. That's the other one I would suggest doing, is just recognize, Mary going to the hill country to visit Elizabeth, and John leaping before the womb. Great evidence of Luke drawing a deliberate parallel to David in the Old Covenant dancing before the Ark of the Covenant. The wording that Elizabeth uses in greeting him, in greeting Mary, is very similar to David's words, greeting the Ark, etc. So there's a lot to it there. And
then, the Magnificat.
The Magnificat, the fact that Mary is the one who, as it were, instructs the first disciples on how to behave at the inauguration of Christ's public ministry. He says his hour has not yet come, and yet she simply turns. She doesn't rebuke him. She doesn't correct him. She doesn't, gainsay him necessarily, but she turns to the servants that are there and she says, do whatever he tells you. She trusts him, as it were. So it's unspoken. They're silent there. And you could read that. And again, you could get a problematic theological idea that Mary's pulling some kind of passive-aggressive power play over against Christ, and that he is then moved to act out of what? Social expectation? Fear of embarrassment? No, it's just, you can't, we have to allow these things to kind of just breathe and just sit with them and say, so what does that mean? And why is it an important detail that he gets the objection out there and says, not only what does it have to do with me? You'll hear odd translations of the wedding feast of Cana, what has it to do with me that they're out of wine? But he actually says, woman, what have you to do with me? Right? Like, it's kind of like, not only does he call her woman in that kind of general way that could be taken again as a slight, but he sort of says, what, why are you talking to me? Like, what is, what? And again, I think it's, he's signaling there, because now he's calling in, he's signaling that something important is about to happen between their relationship, his relationship with this woman. The fact that he calls her woman means that she's more than mom in this moment, that she's standing in for more than mom, and she's standing in for the church in many ways. So anyway, lots of richness here, lots of stuff I would encourage. And then one last little apologetic barb that I have to get in there, not barb, but one of the best
shot.
One of the best one-liners in defense of Marian devotion was penned by Chesterton years before he became Catholic, but when he wrote the poem Lepanto, and he's describing the chaotic situation. It's in the stanza where he talks about St. Michael on the mountain, and he's trying to call the princes of Northern Europe to come together or Europe proper, to go to the defense of Christendom. And the reason that that's not happening is because this is the post-Reformation period, and Christians are divided amongst themselves. And he laments this fact. He says, "And Christian killeth Christian in a narrow, dusty room." So that's referring to the inquisitorial trials and the internecine strife amongst the Christians. Then he says, "And Christian dreadeth Christ that hath a newer face of doom." He's he is taking a shot at Calvinism there, which he never really, but he's, this kind of new image of a doomy, gloomy Christ. But then finally, and Christian hateth Mary that God kissed in Galilee. And it's just that one line that really punches home. And I think it's sort of like, yeah. And there are some who in their apologetics against what they see is the church's Mariology. It's kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, watch your mouth. Remember that our Lord kissed this woman in his incarnate being. Like let's have show reverence at least as much as he showed reverence, right? So anyway,
just keep your mom jokes out of it, please.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, that was great. So mine is much shorter. It's a shorter poem, but I'd love to see your thoughts on it. And it's gonna be a bit of a whiplash. It is a very interesting poem by Chesterton. Very, very unique. It is not the typical style that you're going to be used to. It is, and I'll see if we can maybe get a picture of it on the screen when the podcast airs. But it's from GK's Weekly in 1933. And so here, I'll just read this. And the title of this poem, Grettelyn, is Crooked. Crooked. The little picture of the Mother of God hangs crooked upon the wall. Blue and bright gold, like a butterfly pinned askew, only it does not fall. As stooping ever and falling never, an eagle hangs winged over all. And it suddenly seemed that the whole long room was tilted, like a cabin in stormy seas. The solid table and strong upstanding lamp and the inkstand leaned like stiff shrubs in a breeze, and the windows looked out upon slanted plains and meadows, as on slanted seas. And I knew in a flash that the whole wide world was sliding, ice and not land, and men were swaying and sliding, and nations staggered and could not stand, going down to the ends of the earth, going down to destruction on either hand. And knowing the whole world stiff with the crack of doom, I pick up my pen and correct and make notes and write small, and go on with the task of the day, seeing, unseeing, what hangs over all, the awful eyes of Our Lady, who hangs so straight upon the crooked wall.
Ooh, that's good.
Isn't that good?
Wow. That might be one of my new favorite Chesterton poems. That's really good.
It is fantastic.
Oof.
It's just this great image of, looking at a crooked picture of Our Lady on the wall, and then the whole world shifting perspectives so that she's straight and upright and everything else is what's slanted. And talk about symbolism. Yeah, so rich.
Yeah,
so
and
rich.
it's so zoomed in and zoomed out at the same time, but it's it's unusual Chesterton for sure. I really like that. Yeah,
it really is. His writing, the style, I tried doing scansion on it, and I'm like, it rhymes, but it's free verse. It's not. It's kind of it's out there. I mean, there's no way of easily identifying this poem. That correct me if I'm wrong, viewers and listeners. You'll have caught a glimpse of it there on the screen, and if you are really good at identifying dithyrambic hexameter or something like that, then then let me know that I'm just not versed enough in some of the classical Homeric forms. But no, it's a banger. It's a great poem.
Yeah, and what an astounding image. Yeah, I mean, you're coming up to World War II, right? So it's he might have been just feeling all of that tension too, and all of that coming horror, having lived through World War I and lost his brother and everything. Like maybe there was some of that there, but I love that feeling of like, the world is crooked and not her. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And like by looking, you reorient to what is straight. And great line too with that. I think you're totally on to it, that it's 1933. It's a troubled time. He says, no, it's the room that's tilted like a cabin in stormy seas. That also makes me think of, his writing office at Beaconsfield was really oak paneled, and it didn't occur to me until reading this poem. I've been in that. It's now the dining room in the private home that the Chestertons Top Meadow became. But when you can see the old pictures of it when it was his writing study, and his desk was there, and it is like nothing so much as the set design of like Davy Jones's cabin in Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Like it's just all the wood, lots of wood, beams around and such.
Just needs like an organ in the corner.
Yeah. But he, I love the thing where he says, knowing that the whole world was stiff with the crack of doom, I pick up my pen and correct and make notes and write small. That humility to like, I'll and I'm just going to do what I can do today, and consider it small, my contribution, correct and make notes and write small. Humility at the end of a career where, he knows the impact that he's had, but he doesn't let it go to his head. And he realizes that this is just, his small,
Well, and it might be a feeling of knowing the impact he hasn't had too. You know what I mean? Like, because he saw Hitler for what he was long before anyone else did. He kind of was warning against a lot of things that were coming, and maybe in some ways this was a down moment. It sounds like a down moment a little bit, obviously with Chesterton's signature, not optimism, but his signature ability to pull himself up by Mary at this point. But yeah, I'm wondering if, humility for sure, but also maybe some feelings of this is all I can do and it's not enough kind of thing.
Yeah. Great sense of resignation of it. It's like I say, I love the poem because it's just such a side of Chesterton that you don't necessarily see all the time. It's a bit maybe more introspective and in poetic form, and I do find when you find that in Chesterton, it comes through in his poetry. It comes through, kind of sneaks up on him, I think, as he just gives voice to the poetic muse. But
he does have a sort of triumphalism in a lot of his poetry, and it seems to be absent from this one.
Yeah. I think so. I think this is it's aged like fine wine, It's like this isn't the Mariology which is different from Mariolatry. Mariology is just the study of Marian devotion. This isn't, though, the tenor of that you see in
even in Queen of
Lepanto,
Seven Swords,
the Ballad of the White Horse, and then even Queen of Seven Swords. Although I think by Queen of Seven Swords, you're starting to see that tempering, not sobriety. It's not coming down. It's deepening and richening, and it's kind of like the difference to me between why not? I've probably offended a lot of people already in this episode, so I'll just go for it. It's like, Hershey's chocolate bar versus, something from a fine atelier sweet shop on the streets of Paris, right?
Yeah.
Or Brussels, where you just get this piece of chocolate and it is sweet. It has that sweetness. It has everything you love about chocolate. It's just complex and deep and more well-rounded and more, you can tell that it's been achieved through a kind of mastery that maybe the off-the-shelf stuff doesn't have. And I think that's kind of like, Chesterton, it's 1933. He's 3 years away from his own death, although he doesn't know that, but I'm sure he's starting to get tired. he's seen a lot of the world and seen a lot of life. And I just love that, he realizes that he needs to let go of certain things and look at but at the same time as we're saying all this, and this is all true, it goes back to the earliest wisdom of Chesterton that it's not, the world is off kilter. The world is off kilter. The cross stands up straight, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the image that he uses earlier. So he's kind of taking a very early image, or that you only see things right side up by standing on your head. He's taking an insight that has been with him through his entire religious career, and now he's enriching it with this perspective that he and Our Lady can have. So it's not just saying that like, she only, well, her under heaven. It's her from a heavenly vantage point. That's what gives her the perspective, and that's what he's getting closer to having himself. I think at the end of life, he's going to enter that beyond the veil and get to see things the way that he had to work to see things here. And if you've ever thought, viewers, listeners, that Chesterton just saw things this way, it's just very not. Read Dale Alquist's new autobiography of Chesterton. I know that sounds like a spoken typographical error, but no, it's an autobiography of Chesterton. It's Chesterton in his own words explaining his life, and the perspective of paradox and wonder and joy that Chesterton took effort, and he was just as much on the walk of daily conversion as any of us needs to be. So
beautiful. Yeah, and this feeling of her eyes like a lighthouse, taking that ship imagery, like it just zones in on her at the end, and that's what gets you home. It's like, good one, Joe. Really good one. Yeah.
I thought you'd like that one.
I did. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great fun, and I think a great use of half hour of our time here in the month of May to honor the great Queen of Heaven, Our Lady, who intercedes for us to Christ, her Son, just as the whole communion of saints praises Christ and gives him praise and praise for one another. And so, viewers, listeners, we ask your prayers for us here at the Society of G.K. Chesterton. Be assured of our prayers for you, and we will see you next week. God bless you.